Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. Last week on The Big Picture, my guest was Chris McMaster, who is running for Amherst Town Justice. Now, elections for a position of judge or justice are a little different in today's world of politics. Running for a courtroom is supposed to be an unbiased, objective job. Politics is not supposed to come into the picture, but if you're a voter and you're tasked with choosing the judge that will judge the cases in your town or city, how do you decide? Well, on this big picture, my guest is Jeffrey MARION, who is also running for the position of Amherst Town Justice against my previous guest, Chris McMaster. For the voter, you the voter, not only in Amherst, but anywhere, if there's a judge to be elected, on this big picture, we'll explore what a town justice does, what you might want to know about the decisions that are made, and basically how to be the most informed voter in such races. So it's my pleasure now to welcome to the big picture Jeffrey MARION, running for Amherst Town Justice. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and we'll get right into it. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, the first thing is that I am currently a judge in the town of Amherst, along with my colleague, Ann Nichols. Prior to that, I've been admitted to practice in New York State for 30 years, and most of that, almost all of it in fact, was in private practice. I represented for a large majority of it veterans denied service-connected disability. I also have extensive experience in criminal law. Although I don't do it as much anymore, I have transitioned into representing people who are injured in crashes, in falls, and by unsafe products. That dovetails in, for example, the 3M combat earplugs case. In that case, our Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans received from 3M earplugs that did not work at all, and they suffered permanent hearing loss as a result. So that led to a very large settlement. I did have some time as the town prosecutor in Amherst. I was there for 4 years. I worked part-time for a while, and then I was full-time for 2 years, but I still maintained my private practice. And I left the town in 2020, and I have been in private practice up until being appointed as judge. And I still maintain that practice in addition to being on the court.
Okay. Well, I kind of talked about this with Chris McMaster. Judge Penny, who is associated with us here at the station, and other judges that I've known are fairly careful because they have to follow a code as to what they can and cannot talk about. In other words, politics, for instance, shouldn't enter into the decision-making process. It's supposed to be, as a judge, unbiased and basically an interpretation of the law. So it's a personal thing. But if we talk about anything that you can address, it'll be perfectly understandable that you can't talk about it. What role do the parties play in an election for a town justice or a judge?
Well, they play a general role. What they do is they will carry the petitions, get you on the ballot on any of the 4 lines that are available. They will have volunteers. That's where you may draw your volunteers for your campaign. They will put together, maybe help with getting the mailers out. The things that putting up the signs, the things that the political parties generally do for their respective candidates. But the advocacy or the discussion, as you noted, about politics, about your political views, are very strictly forbidden in these kinds of elections. So whereas you may get questions about hot button issues, and it can be anything from town issues as to the golf course, or it could be anything like abortion or immigration, you really can't discuss those cases. You have to be neutral. You have to say, look, I will apply the law and I will follow the law as it has been enumerated by the courts and by statute.
You know, and the primaries come up now. I think June 14th is early voting, and then June 24th is the primary day. And then there's the election in November. What role in this particular instance does the primary play in this race? Is that going to pretty much determine the outcome in November, or is it just going to set the stage?
I think set the stage is an accurate way of putting it. Mm-hmm. What happens is the difference, and this is judicial candidates. Judicial candidates can cross-file on any of the 4 lines. Mm-hmm. They can do that without the authority of that party chair. So simply what you do is you file petitions.
If you get enough signatures, then you can be on the line.
That's correct.
Okay.
So what we did is we have shown broad community support in being able to qualify for the Democratic, Republican, Conservative, and Working Families lines. The primary obviously decides who the party's nominee is going to be in the election, the general election. So these primaries do play a very big role as to what candidates are going to be on the ballot come November for the voters to select.
Okay. As a town justice, and you're currently on the bench, what kinds of cases appears before you in a town court?
Well, primarily it's criminal. Most of my caseload is going to be criminal misdemeanors.
And that surprises me. You know, I would have thought it would have been traffic, but explain.
Well, I want to come back to criminal in a moment, so let's put a pin in that. How about that?
Yep.
But with traffic, what happened is, now when I was the town prosecutor, that was pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. So I would be there for each of the 2 judges, and I would have about 125 to 175 cases on that day. We had, most of it was in person. And then there would be some, we would let out-of-state people plead by mail, or if you were represented by an attorney, the attorney could ask to plead by mail. Mm-hmm. But that was a very limited, I had an inbox, and there might be 50 over the course of a week that I just simply would write up for the judge. After COVID, or during COVID, because the volume, and let's be clear here, the town of Amherst Court is probably one of, if not the busiest town court in New York State. And the amount of traffic enforcement that there is massive. So over COVID, we transitioned to the mail. So once the tickets were issued, we were allowing people to plead their case, whether you lived, you know, a stone's throw from the courtroom or you lived out of state, you could plead by mail. So the court has, to a large degree, kept that policy. So our town prosecutor does most things by mail. There are some people, if they forget to send the letter in, they're told, come on this day, and then they can meet with the prosecutor and come and see me. But the caseload is diminished. Now, while the numbers may be similar, in terms of what I'm sitting on and what I'm doing, it is presiding over criminal cases.
Interesting. What kind of, you know, criminal cases in a town the size of Amherst? What are some examples of what would come into the court?
Well, we get pretty much everything. One thing I want to correct on the record is my opponent said that as far as felonies go, you arraign them and that's it. That's incorrect. Mm-hmm. The best term, and this is one actually from judicial education I've taken with the state, is they call it babysitting the felony. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, the crimes are going to be misdemeanors, your petty larcenies, your driving while intoxicated, domestic violence. Those are some examples. Felonies, yes, you do arraign them. You actually, as the judge in town court, will run the felony hearing. The felony hearing is where the prosecution has to show that there is probable cause that this person, the defendant, committed the felony. And then action can be taken. The case is then sent up to the Superior Court. Now, other things that can happen, you keep the felony case until either the district attorney's office decides to reduce the felony charge to a misdemeanor and keep it in court, in the town court, or the case is, the felony hearing is waived, excuse me, or the case is dismissed so that it can be indicted downtown.
What kind of guidance as a judge or justice do you have to follow primarily in that kind of a jurisdiction? Is it the Constitution? Is it the state constitution? Is it local ordinances? Or just a combination of everything?
It's kind of a combination of everything. Because a lot of the hearings you run, and you may run a lot of pretrial hearings. Hearings about whether there was basis for a traffic stop, whether the officers had a basis to search the vehicle or the defendant's person, whether the statements can come in that they made to the police, whether they have a criminal record, whether any of that is relevant to or can be brought up during a trial. So those are things that, and you're looking a lot of that is case law, and it is based on case law. In fact, those, I won't get into the weeds too much, but a lot of that is based on, and they have names like and they're based on the cases that they come from, such as a Huntley hearing regarding statements is an example. But you will be running those hearings, you'll be deciding those motions. In addition to trying cases can be tried either jury or non-jury. Interestingly, there are no cases involving defendants that are under the age of 18. There are new laws that have come into effect called Raise the Age, because there's been some chatter about youth cases, but all of those are heard by family court.
I see. Okay. Well, you know what? We're out of time for this segment of the big picture. When we come back, we're going to get into a little bit more about, how rulings are made and just the types of things that you're going to deal with, maybe as you have to go into a town court for whatever reason. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Jeffrey MARION, who is currently a town justice in the town of Amherst, and he's running for election in this November's election to be a full-term justice in the town of Amherst. Getting back into it, what are the greatest challenges? You're currently on the bench. What are the greatest challenges that you see or face as a town justice?
It's easy to get caught up in the moment. You can, if you're a judge, you can think of yourself as a referee, where you have the two lawyers arguing in front of you, and you feel like you have to make a call in that moment. And your best friend is the recess, is the stop, take a break, and you can actually go back and research it. The other interesting thing is that the state provides a service, the Office of Justice Court Services through the Office of Court Administration actually provides a backstop where you can call. And this actually happened to me. We got into a complicated issue about whether this defendant was bail eligible. I'm getting an argument from the defense attorney. I'm getting an argument that's the exact opposite from the assistant district attorney. Their voices are raising. Okay, everybody, let's stop. I go back. I can call, and they actually link me to a lawyer who is my law clerk for the moment.
Okay.
As like a superior court judge has a law clerk. So I can lay out, here's the facts, Here's the situation. What is the law on this? And now what this lawyer did for me, who's in Albany, is provide me with, here's the statute, here's some case law, this is really where you can apply it. So it's taking a break, it's not getting caught up in the moment, it's getting it right and not being afraid to take that recess. Even if you've got a packed courtroom, you've got lawyers that want to be somewhere else, they've double booked, but taking that so that you get it right, you've applied the law correctly, you've applied the law fairly,
Okay.
and you've acknowledged both sides have very good arguments and compelling arguments, but this is what I have to follow. You cite those things, and you take that time.
You know, you mentioned bail, and this is not specific to the race that we're talking about, but a lot of people don't understand the bail parameters these days because the no bail, you hear a lot about this in the media. Explain to me a little bit about how bail works in today's court sessions, you know, as opposed to what it used to be.
There is bail available in some misdemeanor cases. For example, violations of an order of protection. If you have somebody who commits a number of petty larcenies, there can be a motion from the district attorney's office to say that this person is a danger to property and appropriate bail can be set. You also have to remember that no matter what, bail is simply a financial guarantee that somebody appears in court. You can set bail on a number of qualifying felonies,
Okay.
and they are enumerated, and there is a chart that has been provided by, again, the same office that helps guide you as to when you do have eligibility for bail. There are cases certainly where the person does not qualify for bail. We have to follow the law, and to be honest, it is one that is difficult to interpret, and the statutes do have a lot of ambiguous language. But at the end of the day, you have to say, what is going to make sure that the person appears in court? We also have available release under supervision. Some defendants might qualify for that. What that does is that allows that they report to the probation department that they have a steady place to live, a phone number they can be contacted. You can require an ankle monitor. You can put a curfew on them. But there is a bail mechanism. It's not as overly simplified as, oh, just about anybody. Anybody who says, oh, anything short of murder, they can get out on bail. That's wildly inaccurate.
Okay. Since you have rules and laws that you must take into account when you're dealing with different cases, what would make one justice different from another justice? In a case like this, when we're choosing between two candidates, you're basically there to do the same job. You're following the same laws. You're following the same rules, you know, and so what would the difference be between two justices?
It's really the interpretations, I think, because honestly, you're looking a lot at case law. While there are statutes, not everything is black letter. There are a lot of things that are 50-50, could go either way, or certain facts apply one way, certain facts apply another way. So it's really not, it's not simple. So I think what it really boils down to is experience and qualifications. It's who a voter would want in that position or what they would think makes a good judge.
Well, and that leads me to my next question. And, you know, when the voter out there is about to go into that voting booth and they see, you know, they see party lines and they see names, but maybe they don't have the most information. This is kind of a generic voting question, but how do you decide? How do you make a choice between one candidate and another? And maybe the question is, how do we prepare to go into that voting booth and make that decision?
It's up to the candidate to talk about his or her qualifications. The why. That's really what it boils down to. So why should the people of Amherst keep me on the bench? It is my 30 years in private practice, most of it representing veterans denied service-connected disability compensation. It is representing people who have been catastrophically injured. It is being a former town prosecutor and knowing the court inside and out before I even applied for the job. It is doing things that demonstrate that you're involved in the community. I filed the very first lawsuit by any town in New York State against the manufacturers and distributors of opioids. That case settled a couple of years ago. Ultimately, that's going to return $500,000 to the taxpayers. So when you're comparing resumes, and that's what you have to do in these cases, that's what stands out. And I think my work in the community and for the community is the primary reason why the people of Amherst should vote to keep me on the bench.
Okay, my last question is more of a generic question for the purpose of the viewer now. If you're going into a town court, whether it's a traffic case or small claims or for whatever reason, what is a town justice, you sitting there judging, what do you look for in someone who's appearing before you and making a case?
Well, let's break it down a little bit. Because one of the things we haven't talked about is we have problem-solving courts. We have a drug court, and we have a domestic violence court. So for example, in those courts where we are helping people with addiction or being able to get out of domestic abuse or being able to help them see other alternatives than abusing a partner, is honesty. In a situation, be honest, and be honest about what you have in front of you and what's going on. When you're talking about small claims, have your receipts, have your witnesses. You can't come in with a letter from somebody because the judge can't accept that letter. It's hearsay.
Okay.
If you're saying that you paid somebody for a service and they didn't provide it, show the contract, show your canceled check or your receipt for the cash. Have any witnesses that say, or in photographs, have all of that available. In traffic matters, remember, and this was another inaccuracy that my opponent put forth in his interview. You as the defendant don't have to disprove anything that the police officer says. You have the right. They have to prove each and every element of the offense. But if you have things, you bring your photographs and be ready to ask questions. Get counsel in that situation to assist you. In criminal cases, don't show up without an attorney, but fortunately, nowadays there's the Attorney of the Day program through assigned counsel. So even if you can't afford an attorney, there is one there that is able to assist you on the day and shepherd you through that particular proceeding until they can get you permanent assigned counsel. So those would be the fundamentals.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, it's an interesting subject, and it's not something that people, I mean, there are a lot of political races, and we vote, hopefully we vote, you know, our voices are heard in choosing the people that basically serve us in the government. And this particular kind of race for courtrooms, for justices. It doesn't follow the typical political theme that you normally have. I'm happy that you could be here to explain who you are and your philosophy. You know, I wish you and your opponent the best of luck, and I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank everybody here for watching WBBZ-TV and The Big Picture. We appreciate you. We count on you. We're your local TV station. So thank you for watching The Big Picture, and we will see you next time on The Big Picture.